Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Aaron. This is my beautiful wife, Sarah, and we are doing our Sunday follow-up. And this is where we take questions about the message or the sermon or things that we couldn't get to, and we kind of go through them a little bit with a little bit different detail, and Sarah adds some of her input. So
And my humor.
And your humor. Yes, everybody's greatly appreciative of your humor. So, we'll let you go ahead and start us off then.
All right. So, sermon yesterday was about Jesus' commandments to love God, love others, and love self. Can you explain again how those play out and why do we focus on loving ourselves first?
Well, we don't necessarily focus on loving ourselves first. That's the one we talked about first. And the reason I say that is because that's one that we often forget or is easiest to ignore. Obviously, if we love God first, then we're going to get it right. In fact, if you love God, you're going to begin to love yourself. And what I mean by that is that you'll begin to give yourself grace. You'll begin to see yourself through God's eyes because you'll take upon yourself a godly worldview, meaning that you will begin to see yourself as God sees you, someone that's beautiful and sacred because he made you that way, and then Jesus died to restore that image in you. So it's not that we focus on ourselves first, but rather that we don't forget ourselves in the midst of who God calls us to love and care for. So we're going to see ourselves through God's eyes. The key point there is to remember that God made us in his image. And so I spent a lot of time with the youth Sunday. We kind of do a modified version of this with the youth then. And I spent a lot of time talking about self-talk and how we do a lot of negative self-talk. And for me, when I was younger, the word was stupid. I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid. And I would say that about myself a lot. And it wasn't really until I got into college that I heard of the concept of self-talk and how it reinforces a negative narrative in our head. And so we began to fix that self-talk in college with the help of counseling and just the idea that I'm not stupid and I can't say that. And so I had several negative kind of narratives running through my head. I didn't believe that I was good looking at all, and I believed that I was stupid. And so the counselor literally had me saying, every time you go by a mirror, say, hey, good looking, or give yourself a compliment. And when you do something good or bad, rather than be negative with it, give yourself positive talk. And so basically what they were saying was refute the lies that are in your head and replace it with the words of God. And so if God says you're beautiful and sacred, that means you're beautiful and set apart with a purpose. You can't be stupid. You can't be worthless. You can't be garbage. You can't be trash, or as one of our youth says, I'm bad. That's just what I tell myself. I'm just bad. And I said, God doesn't create bad. And so just replacing that negative self-talk with God's words and God's thoughts and God's language. That's called taking on a biblical worldview.
I think you're really smart and really good looking.
Oh, well, thanks. I think you're amazing.
Thank you.
Do you struggle with self-talk? Because I think we all do. How do you see that in your life?
I think I have more of a tendency to focus on areas that I feel are not strengths of mine and focus on where I feel I fall short versus the things that I'm accomplishing and the successes. So I think that's where my negative self-talk, I feel guilty about every little thing all the time. I wish I could do more, be more for all people all the time, and you can't. And I think just reminding myself that I can't please everyone, so I need to focus on pleasing God, and in doing so, I'll be more aware of what He wants me to prioritize and what He would have me do, and that will help me, in a sense, to please others if I put God first. So that's where I try to kind of combat the negative self-talk.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people that I talk to, and you in your role in leadership too, that they just are constantly tearing themselves down with their negative self-talk and don't even realize it. And again, what's so crucial there is to realize you're criticizing God's creation. And when you criticize the song of the song, you're criticizing the author. When you criticize the painting, you're criticizing the painter. And so again, you're criticizing God and tearing His creation down when you do negative self-talk.
I think we maybe justify it by trying to be humble and not prideful. But we go too far the other way, then, I think.
And C.S. Lewis warns there about a false humility. Like, hey, we kind of go and say, hey, I'm not really that great, and we give people the reasons why. But often the reality of it is I'm actually going to tear myself down before you can. That way, when you do it, I've already beat you to it. And so you can't take me down any lower than I've already taken myself down. And so it's like a psychological defense that we use, saying, if I just negative self-talk about myself, then you won't have the chance to hurt me. Because I've already said, I agree with you. I'm already stupid. I agree with you. I agree with you. I've already said all those things. See, you can't hurt me. And so it's a fake shield. It's a fake, again, invisible shield, if you will, that doesn't work. But it is subconscious that we know, hey, if I just say it before you do, then you can't hurt me.
I think you said something that just reminded me of when you and I, early on in our marriage, were kind of trying to problem solve some things. And in my mind, you noticed all the things about myself, all the areas where I thought I was failing. And when we actually sat down, I think we had some sort of tool that we were using to kind of communicate about things, and I realized, oh wow, he doesn't sit around thinking about what a failure I am. And so I think just being able to communicate and confront some of those things, because the lie gains traction in your mind and pulls you down in a negative self-talk spiral.
And I remember that conversation because you just kind of looked at me, you're like, you don't care if I do this, or you care if I don't
take
be
a nap.
that.
You don't
and I was
care.
like, I don't care. Go for it.
Yeah.
And again, you just thought like, hey, he's constantly focused on my negative things, and I was like,
because I was, yeah,
right. And I was like, no, I love you if that's what you want to do. And again, I don't see that and that. I don't care if you ever do that. I'll handle that.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
It's just knowing, what you prioritized and what didn't matter to you at all, that I thought, oh, he's going to hate this about me.
And in that, there was a gift of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but of freedom.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
And that's what the grace of God should give us. It's like, oh, it's okay to be just me.
Yeah.
But because that's who He made us. So it should be a gift of freedom that we receive through grace. And again, often people in their relationship with the church find that they leave with more burdens, more rules, more restrictions. But the gift that God gives us is the gift of freedom through grace.
Yeah. My dad and I were just talking yesterday, and he was saying, it's so simple. It's so simple. We make it so complicated, but that's all it is. It's just...
The great theologian Ray Brewer.
Good job, Daddy. So simple. So sometimes you say, apart from Jesus, there is no reason to love others or to treat them kindly. Explain what you mean by that.
Okay. I'm laughing because of the face she made there.
I have a very expressive face, and I don't know it until I watch myself back, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it doesn't stop moving. Sorry. God made me that way, and it's okay.
I find it incredibly attractive and humorous. So, well, here's what I mean. The Christian worldview is unique in the sense that no other worldview actually calls you to love others. And so it's absolutely fascinating. While not every other religion, and when I use the word religion and worldview interchangeably because often they are, but while not every other religion or worldview calls you to harm someone, many of them do, but the idea that you would love sacrificially is really kind of unique to the Christian worldview, and then modeled by our leader. And again, other teachings have this as part of their identity, but it wasn't modeled in the way of the sacrificial love that it was by Jesus, which is why Sunday we talked about we serve the God of the Tao, not the God of thunder, not the God of lightning, not the God of mighty lizards that are going to come down and zap you, not the God of heat zapping or whatever you would have in ancient mythology with a God who conquered and destroyed and showed his might. But we serve the God of the Tao. And we talked a bit about how Hitler recognized this and said, this is not the God that we need for the Nazis. And of course, he approaches everything with an atheistic worldview. But he said that one of the reasons that the Nazis ultimately struggled to or lost World War I is because so many of them worshiped this meek and sacrificial God. And he recognized the truth of the gospel and that Jesus didn't come to conquer through force, but rather came to conquer through love and sacrifice. And that's really unique, and again, sets our worldview apart from every other worldview. And so at that point in time, then the question is our worldview true? So it's set apart, it's unique, is it true? And the answer is yes, and we're not going to dive into all of that tonight, but it's actually a good question that you would ask your atheist friend who says, I don't believe in God. Why would you love others? And often the answer, it comes down to something like, well, I think we should love others because when humans work in harmony, somehow that produces a better environment for survival of the fittest. But the reality of it is often we see when humans don't work in harmony and when they don't work together that they get ahead and succeed. If I don't work in harmony but I cheat and I'm the only one in the class that cheats, I'm the one that got the best grade. And so again, the idea that an atheist would say, hey, we should love each other, they're actually stealing that from God. They're actually stealing that from the Christian worldview because the atheistic worldview cannot support the idea that we should care for each other or treat each other kindly, other than to try to smuggle in a piece of the Christian worldview which says this is how we move forward.
Okay, this is a totally unrelated question, kind of.
Okay.
I was wondering when you preached on this Sunday, if Hitler felt that Jesus was weak, what was it about the Jewish culture that, since they didn't believe in Jesus as the Messiah, so what religious stance did Hitler take?
Well, Hitler was an atheist.
Okay.
And it's funny because there are a lot of people who try to say, well, Hitler was a Christian, and while Hitler understood...
I guess I assumed that since he was against the Jews, I guess I've always assumed that he believed in Jesus.
No. Now, again, anytime Hitler could twist Christianity and use it, he said he told the church that they needed to hate the Jews because they were the ones that killed Jesus. That's really not historically accurate, but again, anytime Hitler, as anybody who's working in a factory or, if you will, facade of lies, they're going to use everything they can and twist it. Again, there's some people who actually think Hitler was a Christian, but if you read Mein Kampf and you read many of the other writings of Hitler, clearly he's an atheist. In fact, his entire worldview is survival of the fittest, which is a core belief of the atheistic worldview, not the Christian worldview. The materialistic worldview says what is better survives, and that pushes us into better life. Now, the question you have to ask the atheist is, why is it better for humans to survive versus something else? Or why is it better for this person to survive and not this person? Who determines what better is? Again, now we've had to steal from God. We have to borrow from God to even make a case for something to be better. But the point with Hitler is that he recognized that, again, the Christian worldview, that Germany at one time was a very Christian nation. And he recognized that if we worship this God of meekness, and this God of the Tao, the sacrificial God, it's not a God that's going to go and conquer worlds. He needed a worldview that served him, and the Christian worldview did not serve him. The Christian worldview doesn't serve any of us. Jesus says you serve it, not the Christian worldviews come to serve you.
All right, thank you for clearing that up for me.
That cleared it all up for
you?
Okay, good.
You like my history teacher too.
Oh wow.
Do you struggle to give grace to self?
Yeah, this was a major piece of the message that I really wish we could have spent just a lot more time on. And it is the idea that when we love God, love others, and self, and of course, again, all that comes out of the greatest commandment that Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind. We often forget that we should love God with our mind and strength. And so it is God with all things. And then he says, and then love your neighbor as yourself. So love God, love others, love self. And the part of loving self means that we got to give each other grace and give ourselves grace. And so, yeah, I struggle with giving myself grace. I mean, you know that. There's nobody harder on me than me, which is the case for probably most leaders and most people who are really successful in life. They just, again, I could have done it better. I just didn't do it right. Or when we mess it up, I mean, I don't have a ton of memories from my childhood, but the ones that I do know are the ones when I lied, the ones when I deceived someone, the ones when I hurt somebody. Those are what I remember from my childhood, and those stick with me incredibly. And sometimes they're haunting memories. Times when I said just hurtful things to people that, you could write it off saying you were just a kid, but I knew even then, and looking back, that I just caused someone harm. And the idea that, hey, I need to give myself grace is always a challenge for me. And I think that's important for people to hear, as some people view me as their pastor, or as a pastor at least. It's something that we struggle with, I struggle with, and you've already said that you struggle with that. How do you handle that? How do you deal with that?
I would say that's a huge struggle for me, and something I need to continually pray about, talk with my counselor about, because it's so difficult for me to forgive myself for decisions that I've made, because our decisions have consequences, they have repercussions, and sometimes those affect other people. And for instance, just getting a divorce, when I look at certain situations with my kids and think this isn't the way that it should be, there's guilt, and there's a tendency to not remind myself that God has forgiven the decisions that were made through that process, and God is making beauty from ashes, and there are positive aspects to the relationships that exist now. So I think because there's kind of a ripple effect from those decisions we make, those are reminders that make it harder to give myself grace sometimes.
Yeah.
But I keep praying about it, talking with God about it, talking with my counselor about it, and it's a work in progress for sure.
Yeah. I think I would say one of the keys, as if we could give someone some advice to this, when you start giving yourself grace, is surround yourself with people who are going to give you grace. Now, let me put a very important caveat in here. There's a difference between grace and acceptance. Acceptance is what you can get at the bar, and it feels great. But it doesn't demand that your life change. It doesn't require that you move forward. It doesn't demand any kind of transformation. Grace always demands transformation. I often use this story. Acceptance is you fell in a hole. A man comes by, or a woman comes by, sees you in a hole, stops, and says, "Why are you in the hole?" You tell them the story, and they just feel terrible for you. Oh man, and that hole looks terrible. And then they get up and leave. And for a moment, you felt good that someone was sharing your misery and felt that, but they just left you. You're still in the same hole. In fact, I always say, again, acceptance is something you get at the bar, and then in the morning you actually wake up, and not only now are you void of the acceptance, but now you have a tab that you need to go pay. Where grace is really somebody comes along, they see you in the hole, and often before you can even ask for help, they jump in. And they begin to help you out of the hole. In fact, the model that Jesus gives us is that Jesus jumps in and says, "Do you want out? I'll give you the gift of grace. All you have to do is want it. All you have to do is accept that I am God." And when we say yes, Jesus says, "All right, stand on my shoulders." And he lifts us out of the hole. We're never where we are. And then you turn and you say, "How are you going to get out of the hole?" And you'll say, "Well, this is what grace is. I have paid the price for you to be free. I took your place in the hole." And again, all that's simply to say that there's a difference between acceptance and grace. So when we look for friends, often many of us say, "Oh yeah, I got friends who accept me." That's great. But I also want friends who are going to give me grace. And what I mean by that is they're going to judge me. When someone says, "The Bible says don't judge," I go, "Really? you and I must be reading something different. The Bible over and over calls us to judge. Now it says, when you judge someone, remember, whatever standard you're going to use to judge others, it'll be used for yourself. And it says, hey, get the plank out of your own eye before you go get the sawdust out of your neighbor's eye. But it doesn't say don't go get the sawdust out of your neighbor's eye. It says take care of your house first, then go take care of theirs. And so it's inviting us to judge. And when we judge, we do it in a non-condemning way. I mean, I can say to someone, that's terrible, I love you, but you really need to get that straight. You really need to let God enable a transformation in your life without making them feel worse about who they are. I don't need to make anybody feel worse about their sin. That's not my goal. But my goal sometimes is to say, hey, that's wrong, but we got to move forward. We got to take the steps in following Jesus to become transformed. So I would say surround yourself with people of grace who will love you where you're at and then always invite you to move on. Who will love you where you're at and invite you to move on, which has been one of the things that I think that you have blessed me with in our marriage, and I blessed you, is we simply say, I accepted you where you're at, and you accepted me where I was at, and then we began to challenge each other on how do we move forward, and in all ways, because spirituality is emotional, physical, and spiritual wholeness. It's the three pieces in one.
I think that to achieve that level of intimacy and strength in our relationship and marriage, it took transparency of, okay, these are the things I struggle with. These are the things that I've done that I sometimes have a hard time leaving behind me. I think you said something when you preached yesterday about how, I want to hold on to those ugly things. I forget how you said it.
We're talking about put them on the plow, drag them behind us.
Yes. I want to hold on to all of those, and just being able to reveal what all I was dragging behind me, and have you say, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
Let's leave that at the cross and move forward.
And let me be clear. When I say surround yourself with godly people who are going to give you grace, while we did that as a couple, we also have many friends around us. So it's not like you have to marry someone. You should marry someone who's going to do that for you. But again, there's many friends that we have that all along the journey have coached us, cheered us on, and given us amazing grace. And some of you are watching right now, and to you, we won't name your names, but thank you because you helped us move forward.
You want someone that's going to speak truth.
Right. That's what grace is always truth.
Not just, oh, honey,
Right. Oh, you're in the hole. I'm sorry, but hey, dummy, you know how you got down there.
Right.
Stop Stop digging.
Yeah. Very true. Looks like that's all we got.
All right. Well, hey, again, if you want to know more, check us out at www.faithignited.info. And we thank you for listening, and invite you to follow us on YouTube and like us on Facebook, and continue to share these Q&As. And we really do enjoy doing them with you and for you. And so keep sending us your questions. Have a good night. Signing off, I'm Aaron.
Sarah.
All right, have a good night, guys.
Bye.
Hey, I just kissed your nose, not you.